Hey everyone, welcome to Worn and Wound. I'm your host today, Kat Shoulders, and I've got kind of an interesting video today. So along with watches, obviously, we're going to also be talking about a recent road trip I took from San Francisco all the way down the California coast to Santa Barbara. Now, during this trip, I collaborated with Citizen Watches and their new Sea of Silence Unite with Blue collection, primarily the ProMaster Dive and the new Atessa World Timer, which is really cool, and I'll get into those specs here in just a second. But what was really awesome about this trip was that I got to combine my love of photography and Fujifilm cameras with the technology that Citizen is actually using on the dial of these watches. Today, I want to walk you through some of my favorite photographs from the trip, as well as some of my favorite spots that I love to visit along the coast of California. But before we dive into that, let's talk a little bit about the gear. Now, if you want to read the full journal of my trip, you can go to the link in the description below and check out all of my photos. I'm just going to highlight some of my favorites today. But yeah, going back to the gear. So I really wanted to shoot these on Fujifilm cameras as Citizen was using their technology on these watches. So immediately, I thought of the GFX 50R. I love that camera. I've actually owned one in the past and always have a love for medium format. They're slow, they're big, they're a little clunky, but the imagery that you get out of them is usually really, really mind-blowing. And going on the coast, and I knew I was going to be shooting a lot of landscapes and even some wildlife, I just thought that the medium format would play really well on this trip and kind of slow me down a little bit too, which is what I wanted. Fujifilm lent me the 55mm lens, which is incredibly sharp and was really perfect for the type of photography I was doing. Along with the 50R, I knew I wanted a film counterpart, but I didn't know what I wanted to use. So I reached out to my buddy Ben at Camera West, and they found the perfect camera for this trip. So also medium format, and this is the GA645 ZI, and this is a medium format point and shoot camera, which is very strange, very weird. It's a very 90s camera, but it's incredible. And I was like really mind blown with the images that I got, and we'll go over a few here in just a second. What's actually really cool about this camera is that when you're looking through the viewfinder, you're actually viewing it in a portrait orientation. And then when you flip it vertical, you see landscape. So it's a little bit backwards, which took some getting used to. But it really wasn't that bad, and honestly, just what ended up happening is I ended up shooting a lot more portrait photos than landscape, but it's kind of quirky and fun. You know, changing out film in it is a breeze. I didn't have any issues there. And again, I was just really, really surprised. I've never shot medium format film before, and was just incredibly surprised by the level of detail I got in the photos. I was also able to track down some Fujifilm film stock for this trip. Sadly, Fujifilm has discontinued making film, I think, over the last couple of years. But I had someone reach out to me and sell me a box of the Pro 400H. Was expired, obviously, but honestly, most of the photos came out good. I think there's a couple that you can see some light that came through. Maybe that was my fault. Maybe it's the expired film. Not really sure, but I thought it was actually kind of cool, and I really like those photos. And in fact, one of them is kind of on my favorite list for this trip. And let's obviously talk about the watches, right? So on the wrist, I mostly wore the Unite with Blue ProMaster Diver, which is just right up my alley. It was the one I gravitated towards immediately when we saw this collection. It's a very cat watch. It's big, it's bulky, it's steel. It's everything I want in a dive watch. I absolutely loved it. They've got lime green lettering on the dial too, which just gave it this really 80s vibe that I really love. And I think Citizen does really well with their divers in general. And one also thing to note is the E365 movement that's inside this watch can run for 365 days on a full charge without ever needing a battery change. So yeah, I loved wearing this watch, could not take it off the wrist. And then the second watch I wore was the Citizen Atessa World Timer. Now, obviously the Unite with Blue collaboration, and this watch is kind of insane. So I just want to read to you some of the specs that I see here. 40.6mm case, wore on my 6.5-inch wrist really, really well. I think could fit a lot of wrists that are larger as well as smaller than mine. Super titanium with platinum DLC coating. It's scratch resistant, it's rust resistant, which is really cool. You've got a sapphire crystal, which is always nice to have, anti-reflective on top of that. And here's some of the really incredible specs. You have an atomic clock. So as you change time zones, this watch is going to sync with your current time. No more having to set your watch. So it's an incredible functionality, one that's really nice to have along with the Eco Drive technology. And then you have obviously your world time zones. There's 26 time zones on the watch. It's also a perpetual calendar with a date. The list just kind of goes on, all for under $1,200, which is pretty insane. So something that's really special about all of the Unite with Blue models is that they do work with Fujifilm on this dial that is non-pigmented, and it's like a structural color ink that they actually layer on the dial instead of paint, right? Because you have to allow light to come in to charge these watches, which are quartz watches, and they're powered by any light. I honestly learned a lot on this trip, to be frank. I didn't know that Citizen's been using this technology for about 50 years now, which is pretty incredible, and really the pioneer in this technology. Obviously, I thought it was really cool that they collaborate with Fujifilm, one of my favorite camera brands, in making these dials. And you can totally see the layers when you're looking at the watch. Maybe I hopefully captured it in some of the photography. It reminds you of the ocean. It reminds you of the sea. It reminds you of the layers and the waves that you're seeing. And every dial was a little bit different too. The dial on the ProMaster was not like the dial on the Atessa that I wore. So you really see something a little bit different in each of these. And some of them are a little lighter. Some of them are a little darker. And I think it just depends on how many layers that they're, putting on top of each other to get that different shade of blue. One thing that was surprising to me, and I'm kind of ashamed I didn't know this as I've been a watch collector and enthusiast for a long time, is that I was under the impression that these watches charged under the sunlight, which on this trip I knew I was going to be getting a lot of, obviously being outside, but they also charge at your desk, under a desk lamp, under fluorescence. Not maybe as powerful of a charge, but they are charging, which is really cool. I'm wearing one of their field Eco Drives now that me and my husband share, but it was just something really surprising, something I honestly didn't know about, and think is pretty cool. All right, so let's dive into the trip itself, right? So I've got some of my photos pulled up on my computer here. We left San Francisco right after the wind-up fair. I always like to take a few days after each of these fairs. You can sometimes leave the wind-up watch fair feeling a little overstimulated just from all of the people that come in and out of the fairs. A lot of the crew ends up heading home just immediately after the fair. Then you're in an airport with a ton of people, and I don't know. I like to spend at least at bare minimum a day wherever I'm at and then go home. I feel like having a little bit of recreational time, getting to do something that I love, shooting, driving, whatever that might be, it allows me to leave and go back home on a high rather than a low of exhaustion. So obviously I wanted to spend a few days. We ended up spending 4 extra days after the fair, me and my best friend, and we took the road by storm and headed down south. Monterey is our first stop, and this is just one of my favorite cities in California, just because it's obviously very beautiful, but there's so much sea life and wildlife. It's so lush and green. Really, when you arrive, you're kind of going through the desert, and then all of a sudden you just hit this coastal town that's super lush and vibrant. And I think everywhere you look, just driving down the road, you see sea otters in the water, you see seals, and I've spotted whales just from the shore using binoculars. There's just so much sea life. One thing that's kind of crazy, this is a huge, massive breeding ground for great whites too, which is scary to think about. And personally, I see people kayaking out in the water. That's not for me. I would never do that. That sounds very scary to me. But they're there. They're part of the ecosystem, and as are orcas too, right? There's so many seals, so it's a great feeding area too for a lot of these big predators of the water. But one of the first shots I just wanted to share with you guys is a collection shot of the Unite with Blue watches. Shot this on a piece of beach log, which was kind of worn out and all white, and thought it would contrast really well against the blue dials, which it did. I did shoot this with the film camera. I am very, very lucky. I took maybe 2 or 3 shots because actually wasn't quite sure of the focusing distance of this camera, and there have been a lot of shots where I think I got a little too close and the watches were out of focus. I just happened to nail this shot. I shot it around f8, so all of the dials are kind of in focus, and just really happy with this one. And you can see this is untouched, right? This is straight film. The lab edited these. I have not touched them, and you can see that each of these 5 watches, they're all a little bit different in blue. Some are a little deeper. That Attest is really popping in this photo, as is the ProMaster, but some of the others are just slightly lighter or slightly darker, and you can really see that they are a little bit different in nature. But I really love this shot, and it was really cool just to get them all pulled out for a second and take kind of a group photo shot of them all. So a couple of other just like quick highlights in Monterey. The aquarium there, it's a must. It's absolutely gorgeous, beautiful. There's a ton of volunteers there. They really, really love to employ a lot of people that volunteer their time. A lot of elderly, obviously, but some younger folks too that just really care about our sea life and environment. So after we left there, we went and walked over to the where the Hopkins Marine Station is. And this is where you can spot, a ton of seals. What's really great, and I took this photo, this little baby pup of a seal just kind of following its mama up the sand. And there's a ton of babies there right now. It's so fun to see, but you look out in the water and the mothers are teaching their young how to swim for the first time. They're teaching them how to hunt. It's absolutely adorable. It's one of my favorite spots. Every time we go, we know we're going to be there for a little while. Bring your binoculars, bring your camera. Shot this on the zoom lens that I had with me, the 200 to 300, and I probably have way too many photos of these little pups just wagging along the sand, but they're so funny and cute just to watch and observe. And there's sometimes volunteers that are standing there along the fence line too, and they'll talk to you about these seals. They are very safe from humans. Obviously, they're very well protected. They try to keep the area really quiet too, so there's a lot of signage to keep your voices down. Don't play a lot of music. You'll notice that drivers will turn radios sort of down as they're driving by. But it's nice to see that they care a lot about protecting these seals and the sea life. But because there are so many here, again, this is where orcas come to hunt. This is where sharks come to hunt. So, along with that, it's a good spot to bring your binoculars and sit and watch, because while they don't get as close to the bay as these seals are, because the water's pretty shallow there, you will see a lot of action sort of in this area. So we stayed for quite a long time. And then I got this adorable shot of this sea otter who's just munching on something that he pulled down from the sea. Who knows what it is, but there's a ton of them. And then when you get to see them with their pups on them too, they're just super cute. The seals and the sea otters, they're like dogs of the water, right? And I love dogs. Maybe that's why I love them so much. They're just super cute and adorable. And then just another photo here I want to share. This was on film, and I believe this was on the Fujifilm. I did take some Portra with me as well. So there's kind of a mix of these, but this just really encapsulated the, Monterey. I think the trees, the ocean, the water is so blue, the waves, the rocks. This is one of my favorite photos from the trip. A nice wide. This film camera does have a little bit of a zoom on it. It's not a whole lot. I played around with it a little bit. I really tried to stay as wide as possible for the most part, and I shot this pretty wide as I could. But yeah, definitely one of my favorite shots. And you just have that filmic look. There's a quality to these. I really did my best to try to mimic that with my digital photos, right? And got really, really close, but I can look at them side by side, and I know which ones are film and I know which ones are digital. There's a quality that you get with a film camera that, as hard as you can try to replicate it, it's pretty difficult to get it just right. I also really love this shot that Catlin, my friend, shot of me. She got the ocean in the background in focus, and then I was sort of out of focus as I was like filming something from the looks of it, but just kind of a really cool a shot there that I love. Don't often get a lot of shots of myself, right? I'm always behind the camera, so it's nice to have someone that was there to shoot me and have some portrait shots of myself that I get maybe once every 2 years or something like that. So from Monterey, we went down to Carmel, and then we went even further south to visit where the elephant seals were. Now, I'll be honest with you, this was kind of a surprise to us. So our goal was to do the Big Sur. We were going to go Highway 1 all the way down to SLO. The problem was part of Highway 1 was closed yet again. Seems to be closed every year that we go, at least some part of it. They have some road washing away, bridges that need repair. So kind of to be expected. And if you ever do this road trip, just keep that in mind. Look ahead, figure out where you're going to detour. But we knew we were going to come down to all the way down to like Cambria, and then we were going to go back up. And I was looking on Google Maps and I was trying to find a spot that was just like a good landing spot for us to get to, and then we would kind of make our way back up. And I just happened to see the Friends of the Elephant Seal Sanctuary Visitor Center. And I was like, that seems like a cool spot. Let's just go there. Not even really expecting to go inside, but we got there and we were like, let's just hop in there and just see what's inside. Honestly, I had to use the bathroom, so I thought that might be a good idea. And we went in there and immediately there's all of these skulls and all of the seal stuff. And you're like, oh, wow. And I was immediately intrigued. We were stepping into some sort of museum. In the back of the building, they have this huge television screen that is showing a live cam of the elephant seals that are on the beach just up the road. And so it's actually really cool. And you can look at it at any time. Go to their website. I'll put the link in the description as well. It's fun to have on even as I'm sitting here working throughout the day just to be watching those seals. It's quite the entertainment. Again, I could sit there and watch them for hours. I find them highly entertaining. But the lady that was there just went on and on about the differences between the elephant seals and the regular seals. So the elephant seals come up here this time of year in May, in the spring, for something called molting, which I didn't really know much about. They're not there eating. They're not there feeding, which is quite different from the seals that we just saw, right, that are out there every day hunting and getting fish and feeding for their pups. These seals come here and they're really just here to kind of like hibernate. They also shed their skin, which is very interesting. And that is what's called molting. And you just see them with these huge patches on them. And you'll see a few in some of the photos I took, as well as they're young. They're younger here too, and they're growing and they're getting stronger. They are feeding off their moms. So if you can imagine, these females are here. They're not eating. They have stored all this energy from their hunting seasons, and they're still feeding their young. They're trying to conserve as much energy as possible. You'll see them sort of flapping sand on top of their bodies to keep themselves pretty cold, as well as like taking little dips in the water just to cool off. But they really try to stay as cool as possible and to maintain that sort of hibernation mode that they're in. But they're kind of awake, they're not fully asleep, but they're just vegged out. And when we went up to the beach to see them, I was pretty shocked at how many there were. I honestly, I don't think I've ever seen as many seals as I have at this beach. This is near the San Simeon. I'm not sure how to quite pronounce that beach. I took, obviously, the film camera with me, had my kit, had the 100 to 200 on me as well, and got some really, really fun shots. So the first couple here, I shot digitally. This little guy was barking, and I say barking because they bark, and I don't know what he was barking at. Maybe he was upset one of the other seals are not moving, and he was kind of making his way back up the sand onto the beach. Just kind of captured him mid-bark with his mouth wide open. I thought was kind of funny. Quite a young one. As the males grow older, they start to grow that snout, which kind of makes them an elephant seal. I don't think I saw any large full-grown males. I'm not actually sure if they're quite around at this time. You will know they are absolutely massive. I think she said they get to be the size of like a small pickup truck. And, when we were in the visitor center, their skulls were gigantic. Females a lot smaller, and I just couldn't believe how big they were, certainly for a seal. But I don't think I saw any males that were full grown here. Just all the ones that we saw were pretty young. And here's another photo. I think these are two males. They said the males get a little fighty at times with each other, and these are two that are kind of going at it. Shot this with the digital 50R, and even though it's medium format, it's slow. I know people kind of like to harp on that. You can still capture wildlife. I shot at about of a high frame rate as I could. Not exactly sure on this shot specifically, but if you take your time and you're set up and you are just a little patient, you can certainly grab a lot of wildlife stuff. Maybe not a hummingbird or something like that, but certainly these big slow seals for sure. And then this photo here I took with my film camera. This is with the GA645, and this mama looks like is just sleeping. You know, she's just tired. She's doing what she's there to do. And you can kind of see on her back here some of that molting happening, and those layers starting to peel off. They actually have in the visitor center several of these patches. You'd be surprised how kind of furry they are. They don't look it in the water, and again, they're kind of shedding that layer that keeps them warm, but very, very interesting, and something that's significantly different than some of the other seals that you typically see. This is actually one of my favorite photos, I think, from the whole trip. This is taken with the GFX 50R, so this is the digital camera. What's really cool about Fujifilm is they include X-Pan mode in some of their cameras, and this one has that. And, you know, you can crop to this after the fact when you're editing these in Lightroom or RAW or whatever your editing platform is. But it's really cool when you get to shoot in camera that way, because you get those black bars in the crop, and you know, you're looking through the viewfinder and everything kind of seems cinematic in a way, and you see things different, you compose differently. And just a joy to shoot that way, and almost makes you feel like you have multiple cameras in one. But I did shoot this in X-Pan mode, and as you can see, it's just a great panoramic wide, and shot with the 55 lens, which is not a super wide lens. I can imagine all that I would have been able to fit. But what I like about the 55 is you still get a little bit of compression there. So I kind of like those layers of the trees in front of me, and then seeing the seaside and the cliffside in the background. This is as we were making our way up the Big Sur. And this is what it's about. This is why people go to the Big Sur, just for these amazing vista viewpoints. And there's so many that you can stop at along the way. You know, you almost just plan a whole day to take your time to stop. In fact, I would love to come back and do this trip and do a camping version of it, right? Take a little bit more time and find spots along the coast that I could camp, maybe rent a camper van or something like that, and really just spend the whole day out there. I would really love to do that. And then as we were coming up, we needed gas and we couldn't find another gas station anywhere close by, but we were kind of reaching the point of Highway 1 where it was about to close. So my thought was I either need to turn around because we need to go get gas. We need to head back down south. But we spotted a small gas station just up north. And so we drove just for a few more miles. And I'm so lucky to find this place. It was called Ragged Point Inn. It's a motel, little snack shop, gas station. It looks straight out of the 70s or the 80s. If they've done upgrades, they've kept it kind of preserved. And you know, it only takes cash, so please have cash on you if you plan to stop there. But it's just a really cool point, and we were able to fill up. We were able to get some snacks. And I think what was really funny is that, you know, we got these snacks and we were going to like eat them in the car and then head back down. I had to go to the restroom, and I just happened to notice like behind the restroom, there were all of these like motel rooms that had these great vistas. And I just kind of kept looking and walking, and I was like, oh my gosh, there's an incredible viewpoint just beyond the restrooms here. So grabbed Catlin, my friend, we went back there and we sat and had our lunch on the bench overlooking this incredible view that I took so many photos of. And again, we only drove maybe a couple miles from where we were in that last photo. And, you know, you saw that panoramic. It was bright and sunny. Now it's getting cloudy and foggy. And I think that's what's so great about California is people talk about these microclimates, but it's so true. And we ran into so many of them. And this was a point that we were just several miles more up the road and had a completely different look and feel. It was foggy. It was moody. The water was gray, not blue. And I really love these film shots that I took from the cliffside there. And I mean, our bench that we were sitting on is not very far off of where these shots were. There was these two huge trees, and I kind of got this shot of the rocks and the water kind of in focus between them that I really liked, of course, in portrait mode, and ended up changing film several times. And Catlin grabbed a great shot of me switching out my film with the ProMaster on, which, again, I wore for like 80% of this trip. I freaking love that ProMaster. So much so that, even though this was a sponsored piece of content, like I'm going to go spend my own money on one of these. I loved it so much. Just a really great diver. And, it's big. Don't get persuaded by the size of this thing. I think for me, I have like a 6.5 inch wrist. And because there's no lugs on it, it wears incredibly well. It's a little heavier, it is steel, but I personally like that. I like to feel my watches. I don't mind that it's a little on the heavier side, and that rubber strap really helps balance it out too. But yeah, just some great shots. It was an incredible stop. I'm so glad that we found this vista point right beyond this little gas station and motel. There was a trail that you can actually walk all the way down to the beach. We started walking and thought, may not be able to make our way back up energy-wise. So we only went about halfway through, but just absolutely gorgeous. And I think one of those little hidden gems of a spot. So if you ever make your way up from Highway 1, the Big Sur, definitely make sure to stop at the Ragged Point Inn and gas station there. Get some snacks. They got some cool cream sodas in the fridge that are ice cold, and it's a great little stop. So from that point, we headed south. We were heading down to San Luis Obispo, and on the way down to SLO, we stopped at Morro Beach. And again, talk about microclimates. It changed crazy on us. Incredibly windy, foggy, almost rainy in a way. We're having some drizzle on us. Honestly, it kind of felt like a storm was brewing or rolling in. And I took some shots there. Be honest, we did not stay long because the weather just wasn't really great. And personally, I want to be where it's sunny and warm. But it was cool. There was a lot of surfers out there. There's some people walking the beach. This town is like pretty strange. It's you've got this huge kind of rock island that's out there, and it kind of seemed very surreal, very monochromatic in these photos, both on film and digital, as you can see. But we didn't stay long. We kind of wanted to get out of there. And then we from there we headed down to SLO, which is a cool little Spanish town, and the skies opened up. Incredible sunset, blue skies, sun's out. Like, you couldn't believe that 15-20 minutes ago we were in Morro Beach, where it looked like a storm was literally brewing. Just incredible. And again, just the nature of California coast and getting a little bit of something different everywhere you go, even if it's just miles away. We went and had some great oysters at the Lure Fish House there and sort of ended our night. But then the next morning we kind of took off, and before leaving SLO, went down to Pismo Beach. Sorry for all the locals if I mispronounced that. Beach town, 100%. We were there around 7 to 8 a.m. eating breakfast on the pier, and there were a ton of surfers out, probably hitting the waves before heading to work. And really great whale watching spot too on that pier. So definitely if you're there, take your binoculars and you might spot something for sure. But I really want to talk about the next stop, which was Solvang. So this town, just absolutely crazy. If you're a fan of movies and if you've ever seen Sideways, this town is sort of featured pretty prominently in it. And immediately upon pulling in, I was like, oh, I know that spot from the movie. But this is the Danish capital of America, which I did not know. And our goal was just to really drive through it. And I mean, in and out in half an hour and just drive through a couple of streets. We ended up parking and getting out just to walk around, to take some photos. I think we ended up spending like 3 or 4 hours there, and we ended up having lunch there. It is like such a cool town. You want to go down every street. You want to go through every shop. It feels like Mayberry in a way, that it's just like, is this real? It feels like a fake town. People are very friendly. They're stopping outside of their shops. They're asking you if you want to taste stuff. There's toy stores, and it just feels like surreal. And it was just a very, very cool town. I took some fun shots while I was here. Obviously, the Danish architecture is very prominent. But I wore the Atessa here. I changed watches. I thought it was a little bit more fitting. We weren't by the water. We were sort of in the city, and I thought, I want to be a little bit more dressy. And I'm glad I did, because I got this one shot of me wearing the Atessa against these bright purple flowers that Catelyn took of me. And that blue is so deep and beautiful. And you can really see those dark layers in this too that I'm talking about. The dial is like so iridescent and changes depending on the angle that you're looking at the watch. But just a really, really cool shot there. And I love the pop of the purple flowers against that blue dial. And then I got a shot of this big basset hound. This was the bartender's dog at the place we ate lunch. And I'm a dog person. I had to snap a shot of him howling. He was very upset that his bartender dad had stepped away. So glad I could grab a shot of him. All right, so we're kind of coming to a close here. We're landing in Santa Barbara. This is our final destination, and you know, I love Santa Barbara. I think this was my 4th or 5th time. It's a beautiful city, great college there, and you know, I snapped some really, really cool photos right off of the coast of the college, the UCSB that's there in town. The college kids have access to fantastic beach. I'll kind of explain where we were. So if you pull into the college campus and you make a left towards the coast, you will see a parking lot that you can pay to park right next to the Marine Biology Center there. And so you park, pay for however many hours you want to stay, and then you kind of walk down the sidewalk past the Marine Biology building onto the beach area. And they've got all these trails that you can take. It's quite wonderful, but there's always college kids, usually surfing right there. There's honestly kids taking surf lessons too. You can rent boards there as well. It's just a really kind of neat spot. And I'm very, very jealous that there's kids that go to college and they get to have this right on their doorstep. It's pretty amazing. But one of my favorite shots here is just right off of the overlook down the cliffside where you see these surfers. You see there's several out at this time. And then I grabbed a shot of a hiker. You can't really see it on the journal page because I think they cropped it just a little bit from our website. But this was like one of the few shots that you could see some of that expired film, kind of light leakage a little bit coming through there. I don't know, it kind of just adds to the vibe, right? The vibe and the aesthetic of shooting in film. But I really just love this guy with his backpack on, just kind of at the top of the mountain cliff there in the green. I don't know, I kind of one of my favorite shots. And then here, some of the surfers that are out there waiting for waves. Kind of a slow day, honestly, but really fun. And then if you're in Santa Barbara, you have to go down the wharf, down the pier. It's a must, especially at the end of the day. I mean, the sunset there is so beautiful. We really captured a heck of a one too. We went right in time. And I love this shot. I've got a silhouette of a fisherman that's just sitting on the pier and the sunset behind him, the palm trees that you see everywhere in Santa Barbara, the light shining off the water. I just love this shot. I got a few of them actually with him and another fisherman that he was out there with, but just an incredible photo. One of my favorites for sure. And then the palm trees, right? I love these palm trees. Again, at the end of the day, you get that golden sun just hitting them, makes everything a little bit more vibrant than it normally would be. And just one of my favorite shots from the trip. I've got this like super wide panoramic, again, sort of X-pan mode from the pier, that light hitting the water from the digital camera. And it's just golden. It's just golden. I love Santa Barbara. Definitely make a night, go out there, have dinner. It's a date night place for sure. A lot of couples strolling around, a lot of families too. But seeing the water at sunset, and on the other side you see all the sailboats. It's truly magical. It's truly magical. Well, that about wraps us up. I want to just shout out Citizen Watches and just thank you so much for allowing me to take these watches on this trip. Now, part of the brand's ongoing sustainability commitment, Citizen has actually pledged to donate 1% of all their online sales to support nonprofits dedicated to environmental causes through their partnership with 1% for the Planet. I think that's really cool. I've been in this hobby and industry for quite a while now, and I can probably name on one hand the amount of brands that do some sort of giving back to nonprofits. So this is really cool to see. Another really cool feature of buying one of the Unite with Blue models. If you want to check them out and if you want to see more photos, I will link this all in the description below, so please feel free to do that. Let me know if you like this type of content. Do you like me going over photography? Do you want to see more? Do you want to see editing? Let me know in the description below. Until next time, thank you again.